The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit. In this episode, we're welcoming you to the Tales from the EQA Trenches. We're taking you behind the scenes with the IIA's Quality Services team to hear what they're seeing in the field during external quality assessments, the wins, the challenges, and the lessons learned. Joining this episode is Warren Hersh, Director of IIA's Quality Services, along with lead quality advisors Susan Verghese, Kahl, and Hania Abrous-McCarthy. So Warren, let's start with you. You've reviewed countless audit functions around the world. So what made you want to capture these stories and share them with our listeners today?
Well, Katie, our mission at IIA Quality Services is to elevate internal audit quality around the world. So we feel by sharing our stories, the trends that we're seeing, any emerging issues, that we're able to help expand and meet that mission for internal auditors. Today, we're diving into the world of external quality assessments, EQAs, conducted in alignment with the IIA Global Internal Audit Standards. So let's get into some of these examples. We'll start with Susan Verghese and hear what challenges tend to surface most often when starting a new external quality assessment.
The most important thing that we need to do is understand the structure of the organization and their governance. How is that managed? The reason why this becomes very important is these standards apply to every kind of organization. However, the kinds of organizations that request these external quality assessment reviews are of completely different natures. I personally have done organizations that are family run, where the internal audit is completely outsourced and there is just one individual in the organization that is managing this outsourced internal auditing. We look at the US branches of various foreign banks, government organizations, international organizations, and each one of these has a different kind of governance structure. And that kind of brings up the requirement that whoever is doing these external quality assessments, we need to be really experienced in dealing with different kinds of organizations so that we can apply the global internal standards appropriately and not sort of call out because one organization does or does not have an audit committee or a board as is defined by the standard. A second aspect about doing these quality assessment reviews is the benefit that the organization can get out of doing this external quality assessments very largely depends upon the CAE. In doing some of these external quality assessment reviews, we've come across CAEs who are very eager to learn. This may be the first time or they may be multiple times that they have done it, and they are very eager to learn what is going on in the profession in other organizations and how can I apply it to my own organization in order to improve myself. So the mindset of the CAE is to learn and to improve. We also come across some CAEs who feel that they know it all and are just going through the motions because it is required. The amount of interaction that you tend to get with these kind of CAEs then kind of becomes very limited. And in some cases, we end up talking to somebody who is responsible for making sure the EQA is done, and the CAE doesn't even meet the external quality assessment team, which for us is not quite the way you need to be approaching this. And then we also have CAEs who like to be perfectionists, as I call it, because all they're interested in is, I want the highest rating you can possibly give because I think we are doing everything the way we need to do it. And so that again means that when we come up with issues that need to be fixed, it becomes a very defensive stand or it becomes a long drawn out argument, which doesn't help. In looking at some of the EQAs and gap assessments that we have done in the last couple of rounds, we find that some of the common issues that we have noticed relates to updating the internal audit and the audit committee charters, the internal audit manual, making sure that there is a strategic plan in place. If possible, looking at an assurance map, having that available, as well as using the IIA competency module, a model that is available online. Another key issue that I seem to come across almost in every organization is the new standards require that domain 3 must be discussed by the CAE with the audit committee and senior management. Domain 3 really talks about the oversight of the internal audit function, and there are certain essential conditions that are outlined in the standards. So the CAE must discuss these as well as document that this discussion has happened. And those are some of the key things that I find.
Now we'll hear from Keith Kahl, who's seen that contrast firsthand. Let's hear his example of how the environment made all the difference.
Not so much for us doing the quality assessment, but for the internal audit function. On paper, the reporting relationship was direct to the audit committee and then dotted line to the chief accounting officer. So the direct to the audit committee was fine, very good, but the chief accounting officer is one level below the CFO. The challenges were there was very little interaction between the CAE and the audit committee. The audit committee really didn't support the internal audit function. The chief accounting officer had roles beyond typical chief accounting officer, actually had some more operational roles, like customer service billing and some other duties. The chief accounting officer also tried to influence the audit reports in the internal audit team. So this made it very difficult for internal audit to be accepted within the organization, because also the CEO and CFO did not support internal audit. They had no interest really in regularly meeting with the internal audit team. And that cascaded down to management, not really fully cooperating during audits. So this resulted in an overall partially conforms for the internal audit function. Complete opposite story is where in the charter, the chief audit executive reported direct to the audit committee. The administrative reporting was to the CEO. The audit committee and the CEO, CFO, and other senior executives highly supported the internal audit function. They met with the CAE on a regular basis. The audit committee chair met at least monthly with the CAE. On a biweekly basis, the CAE met with the CEO and CFO, and then typically with the other senior executives at least monthly. Management routinely called in audit for recommendations, advice, insight, and foresight. And this cascaded down throughout the organization where people regularly called on audit for insight, foresight, and advice on potential issues, how to manage risks. Overall, they got a fully achieves rating.
Building on that, with the new global internal audit standards now in effect, Hania will share how these changes are giving CAEs a chance to reset and strengthen their functions.
The new audit standards present an interesting inflection point and possibly opportunities for CAEs to go back to the basics, review the audit manual, go back to the team, make sure that the standards that surround what we do and how we do it are clear. It's an opportunity to refresh around independence, review the reporting lines, which is frequently something that we come across as advisors performing EQAs and gap analyses around organizations, to consider the documentation of how we're adhering to the standards. In terms of what we're seeing, what I'm seeing, there's obviously going to be a range. It can be driven partially by a maturity curve, but also environmental conditions. One example, in a governmental entity where there is a brand new CAE, the culture in that particular governmental agency has presented some challenges, and with the new standards and our performing an analyses, it does allow for providing that particular organization with some recommendations that support the CAE, that support the standards, and help the CAE go back out to the audit committee as well as senior leadership with what is best practice out there around governmental entities, but also entities in general. Another challenging situation was a global public company. The CAE had been there forever, and somehow they had no charter and no audit manual. Everything had just been done because that's how we did it last year. So our working with the organization was an opportunity to help them go out there and start formalizing their processes and bringing them in to line with the new standards. All the way on the other side of the range is an internal audit shop that had been very successfully able to position itself as a value add to their organization from a regulatory perspective. As the key interface with the regulators, the internal audit team was able to demonstrate that the organization had been listening to the regulators, remediating in line with what they were looking for, and really successfully partnering. And that was incredibly obvious through the interview process. And they were really able to go out there to the regulators and champion the value of their organization. There's definitely a range, and there's an opportunity with the new standards for an internal audit team and a CAE to fine-tune their value proposition to an organization.
So Warren, before we close, for organizations listening who might be preparing for an external assessment, what's one piece of advice you'd leave them with?
I would encourage them to access the IA website, specifically the Standards Knowledge Center as one, because there's a lot of things up there that could help them. One would be the conformance readiness tool, the performance measurement tool. There's global guidance on strategic planning. There's a whole bunch of other things up there that you would probably want to look at. The key thing is the conformance readiness tool that really lays out all the new standards. The second thing is I would access the Quality Services webpage on the IA website. We publish a ton of information, including our insights to quality on a number of topics. For example, strategic planning, QAIP. We just published one on conformance with the topical requirements. So there's a lot of information up there. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always schedule a consultation with us at Quality Services, and we can answer any of your technical questions.
Thank you, Warren, and your team for sharing your tales from the EQA trenches.
Thank you. Well, we look forward to more episodes like this with some of our expert quality advisors from Quality Services, and we'll share more stories and more insights. So look for more of these episodes in the future.
Ready to lead with confidence? Join the IIA's 2025 RISE virtual conference on December 5th, all online. Earn up to 7.2 CPEs while diving into resilience, innovation, strategy, and ethics with today's top audit leaders. Save your spot now at theiia.org. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate us. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also catch other episodes on YouTube or at theiia.org. That's THEIIA.org.